bring in our panel. John Avalon, CNN senior political analyst, Ashley Allison, CNN political commentator and former National Coalitions Director for Biden-Harris 2020, and Gerard Filitti, senior counsel at the Lawfare Project. I'm going to start with you, Gerard, because you have an interesting take. You think that this is a good idea to go after Harris?
It's a good idea for the Republicans to go after Harris. You are making an issue out of Biden's age without making an issue out of Biden's age. And you're challenging someone who doesn't really have a track record, not in policy, not in initiatives. She is essentially a good mouthpiece for social issues, but there's nothing that she can run on her own to win the candidacy right now. So by making this about Kamala Harris, the Republicans are basically trying to say that it's not about Joe Biden. He may be popular, he may be doing well, but this is about Kamala Harris. And with her, we have a better chance.
So she can't defend her record because she isn't the president, obviously, but she is the vice president. This line of attack has been used before, Ashley. We've heard it before. Now we're hearing it again, though this time in a different forum. Is this about her political record? Is this about how she's done as a VP? Or is it about race and gender, or all of the above?
I think it is all of the above, but to be clear, the leading factor is race and gender. When you look at her being the first attorney general for the state of California and some of the initiatives that she put forth there, she ran the second largest Department of Justice in the country. That's nothing to sleep on. When you look at her when she was a senator, the line of questionings that she took forth on really important and critical hearings, that's about the same track record as a Tim Scott. When you look now, she is the sitting vice president. One, vice presidents don't set the agenda. They are loyal to their boss, the president. And so I commend her in doing that. But two, when you do actually look at the issues that she has worked on, whether it's reproductive health, whether it is most recently announcing lowering the cost of childcare, whether it is the historic trip she took to Africa with billions of dollars in investment into that country, that is nothing to just roll your eyes at and say she's unprepared. They are taking that attack because she would be the first. They see it has worked before when you attack people's race and gender, and they hope that it feeds the base. And yet again, it's an easy way not to have to go after Donald Trump.
Yeah, she'd be the first woman and the first woman of Indian and black descent. All right, John Avalon. Has Kamala Harris, in your view, because you've also seen the criticism, president, correct? Do they have a lane here?
I think there is a legitimate criticism to be made of Kamala Harris in terms of an enormous political talent who's failed to convert that talent to broader popularity, albeit difficult to do on issues like immigration. There are credible things you can point out that don't have to do with the undercurrent of race and gender, which is a subtext in all these attacks early on. Things like a very high staff turnover in all her positions. That's a legitimate concern. Now, the Biden team is putting her front forward in this campaign, apparently, in really in issues that resonate with the base. The problem is moderate swing voters, independent voters, she is underwater compared to the president. And so it's not a surprise to see Republicans going after her because it is a proxy. Biden is actually difficult to demonize. Kamala Harris is something that can resonate with folks both on the race and gender level and other questions.
Let's take a look at a couple of polls here. Let's pull the first one up that shows the popularity among Democrats. If you did this across the board, the numbers would look obviously different. But among white Democrats who approve of Biden's job as president, 87%, Democrats of color, 73%. I also want to go to the other one that shows where Kamala Harris is. Look at this. White Democrats, 87%, Democrats of color, 73%. John, does that surprise you?
It does surprise me because I would think that her numbers among Democrats of color would be higher, because she is such a trailblazing figure. And that is the source of a lot of the vitriol she's gotten. And if you go back and look in 2020, the early attacks on her, they're all these sort of, she's extreme, she's radical, she's out of touch, she's insincere, she's not up to it, almost echoes of the attacks on Obama that we saw early on. But I would imagine that her numbers among, Democrats of color would be higher, and they're not.
I do think one reason why is the first 2 years of her of the administration, they were literally locked in the White House because of COVID. And now you see her going out to over 30-some states across the geography of our country, talking to people, really getting to introduce herself as a candidate. Sometimes when you're the first, people don't know how to interact with you. And I think right now we're on a learning curve as America. And the more people get to know Kamala Harris, the more those numbers are going to go up.
I want to let you listen to some sound that we heard last week. It's the Democrats really, as you mentioned, sort of she has been this response sort of team, attack team that they sent out after the Republicans do something that they feel is untoward.
Role, yeah.
Right. So let's listen a little bit to what she says. She's talking about teaching Black history. That's going on in Florida, and abortion rights.
Right here in Florida, they plan to teach students that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, in an attempt to divide and distract our nation with unnecessary debates. Republicans in Congress have proposed to ban abortion nationwide. Nationwide. But I have news for them. We're not having that. We're not having that. We're not standing for that.
Gerard, do you think that she's been effective, and could it backfire on Republicans?
I think she's been very effective when it comes to some things. The criticism of the Florida school standards, she's been very effective. She's the right person to be delivering that message, and it really resonates. She is affected by it. A lot of people are. She's the perfect messenger. Abortion as well. That's an issue that resonates not just with Democrats and independents, but a lot of Republicans as well. And having that voice, having that experience talk about it, it goes very far. The flip side, however, is that a lot of other progressive issues, or issues seen as progressive, don't really resonate with a lot of voters. We see other polls that show that where Biden is weak is, for example, among non-white voters who have non-college education. And those numbers are upside down as well. And that's a values issue. So when you have Kamala Harris addressing progressive issues, that might not play so well even to Democratic voters.
That's really interesting.
I would just push back on the idea that, and maybe you weren't saying this precisely, but the idea that her criticism of the educational standards in the new Florida curriculum, saying that, slaves benefited from slavery, that I think it's a mistake to view that as a play to the base issue or a progressive issue. I think that's an American history issue.
Absolutely.
I think that's a reality issue. And I think it's a mistake to say that's simply playing to the base or articulating a progressive point of view. It's bigger than that.
And can I just one thing on voters of color without college education? That is more an enthusiasm question, and will they be able on the campaign to go out, meet those voters where they are, and actually convince them to take their time to go vote them? When you look at the issues, though, they are aligned with where Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is. And so that's the exciting part about the 2024 campaign when it really gets up and running, is getting out and being able to talk directly to voters.
I want to quickly go back because there was a mistake on our numbers when it comes to Kamala Harris. This is why you were so surprised. But take a look at these numbers. So it's 78% of white Democrats. I think we had 87. We had it transposed. And 75% Democrats of color.
Very important correction, first of all. Thank you. That symmetry was unlikely. So here what you're seeing is that her numbers among white Democrats are decidedly lower than the president's.
The president's, yeah.
Right? And that speaks to the enthusiasm gap you hear among donors and private, around Kamala Harris. Now, her number among Democrats of color, slightly higher than the president's, but just barely. And one would expect, given her historic nature, that number would be significantly higher. So that number makes a lot more sense.
She would be a double first if that was to happen, if she was to become president.
100%. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of goodwill going into the election. And you can see in the summer of 21, her numbers start going south along with the president's. But those are interesting,
I think across the board, this election is going to be whether you can get your base enthused. And that means you're going to have to talk to voters. I think on the Republican side as well, we don't even know who's going to be at the top of the ticket. But for Democrats, it's going to be all about enthusiasm because I think they have the policy right.
So, it's independents and moderates, I always think that's
right.
at the end of the day. But, hey.
You can almost bet on that at the end of the day. All right, Gerard, Ashley, John, thank you guys.